that is the street. The huts that they lived in went up this hill. At the top of that hill stood a large blockhouse with cannons on the roof that basically guarded the fort. The palisade wall came down to here. This was the port of Plymouth in the 1600s. It all happened right along the street. They call it Leiden Street now, after the city in Holland that the church folks lived in for a number of years. So those little huts went up that way, and that you see now is the church that descended from the original congregation. We're going to end up there in a little bit. That's called Leiden Street. Land was pretty much just a bunch of old shops stuck in the mud, you know, dumping things in the river up until 1920. And they put this very lovely park here, and you see now. And they named it after William Brewster. Now, Brewster was another example of that generation like Bradford. He was a bit older. His story was, he was from a fairly well-to-do family that he actually went to the university. He dropped out of college, and he got involved in politics. He was involved in some pretty serious diplomatic missions involved with Queen Elizabeth back in the late 1500s. However, his sponsor, the way it worked back then was you were connected to somebody. If they went up, you went up with them. His sponsor was tied in with Queen Mary's execution, which Elizabeth wanted done, but she wanted to blame somebody for it. So his sponsor basically got exiled to the countryside. Brewster was exiled as well. Now that wasn't jail, that wasn't punishment, it was just you weren't going to advance anymore. He had a place to live, and he had income. He was set for life. What did he do with that? He started getting interested in the scriptures. And he started getting very interested in this idea of restoring the true church. So much so that he decided to invite to his home, which actually belonged to the bishop, that the church would meet there. He was risking everything, but it's what he believed he needed to do. And what monies he had, he invested in that. And so that little gathering took place in his home there in a place called Scrooby, England. Now he was doing that, and then when Holland came, he took what was left of his money and he basically bankrolled those farmers moving over to Holland. When he showed up in Holland, he hadn't have anything left. He was now going to have to start working with his hands. So he started teaching English languages at the university in Leiden and took up the trade of printing, because he was very concerned that England wouldn't just sit down and take on this. They were really concerned about cutting off the connection to the traditions and habits of the historic Christianity. That is, that had come down through Catholicism. That was very important to them. And that complete break was something he started calling for he actually published books and smuggled them to England, calling for that. He was known by name to the King of England. The King of England said, hey, we've got to get William Brewster. Well, how'd they get it? He was in Holland. Holland had real policy religious freedom. They meant it. Jews, atheists, Catholics, anybody could worship in Holland at that time. So the British king said, look, I want Brewster. So they came up with a political solution because they had to please the king. He needed his money to fight the Spanish. They said that the ambassador could lead a set of English soldiers onto Dutch soil and grab Brewster. They'd give him the address. At the same time, they sent a message to Brewster, get out of town. And that's how the rules were. They showed up, the printing press was the print shop was empty. They smashed what they couldn't haul away. Brewster was not safe. He had to be on the Mayflower. But how do you get him? They landed in England to transship to go over. So they had to get him on the Mayflower. He's the only one they cared about. The King of England really didn't care if a few little farmers went away to America who wanted to be separatists and got ate by Indians. If they prospered, great. If they didn't, who was lost? But Brewster, he wanted Brewster. So there were people paid to watch for Brewster. And they knew it, the folks in the Mayflower. So what they did is they put him in a barrel. And they rolled him off one boat and onto the other. And that's how he got him. Now, he's one of the oldest people here. He brought with him all of his books, which were about 400 books. And when he died, he left that here as like the first public library in America. His interest. He functioned in the rest of his life as what we've been called the teaching elder. He was not ordained in the Church of England, but he was the one who preached every week and was basically the spiritual leader of the Pilgrims. And again, he had such a respect amongst them that even the people that weren't like separatists, that is, they felt they really should be part of the Church of England. They never joined the separatist church, still felt that he was their leader. And he died fairly early in 1644, but as it says here, his gifts were very underestimated. He didn't see his value, but he left a long-term memory of them.
Ask William Brewster.